Everything that you believe about building a powerful brand is probably wrong. Now, it might have been right a few years ago, but a lot has changed in recent years. The market has gotten a lot more competitive. I think we all feel that. Barriers to market entry basically flattened, right? Geographical barriers, very, very few. Cheap technology has made it possible for everybody to have access to fairly similar platforms that used to only be available, right, to enterprise players. The fact that you can do meetings with people anywhere in the world over Zoom means that not having a travel budget is no longer a complete barrier to being able to get customers elsewhere in the world. And we all know that meeting face to face is obviously best, but we can manage if we have to. It's not as if, oh, I just don't have a travel budget means, okay, well then forget about it. I can't get clients elsewhere. So that's really been tremendously advantageous in terms of enabling just about anybody to enter the market. But the flip side of that is because everyone can enter the market, everyone enters the market. And now you're surrounded by a tremendous amount of competition. People who might be, in terms of product, peers, but people who maybe aren't your peers, maybe they're well below you in terms of development, but that doesn't mean that they're not grabbing attention and potentially grabbing sales. So we have to be able to be aware of this, and our goal as marketers now is to elevate ourselves above that. I mean, social media basically is a blessing and a curse, right? I mean, it's great because people can post anything on there for free anytime they want, no boundaries, no limitations. On the other hand, because it's that accessible, everybody posts a tremendous amount. And now with AI automation tools, I mean, literally anybody can publish on social media without putting any effort at all into it, basically. I mean, even the family dog can be posting 24/7 if he was so inclined. So the massive amounts of content that are being dumped into social media channels make it very, very difficult to stand out. You only look at your own post, but you're not looking at it from like 10 feet back or 100 feet back and saying, well, what would happen if someone who wasn't looking for me specifically went on that particular channel? Would I stand out? Of course, I always notice my posts, and you probably notice yours, but how much am I noticing somebody else's? And how often am I like not seeing things that are being posted there because the algorithm is showing me something else? So it's become very, very challenging. It's definitely an incredibly intense market nowadays. Nonetheless, someone's going to win, and it might as well be you. Typically, the way I look at it is if it's accessible to everyone, then it is not a strategic advantage for anyone. Does that mean don't post on social media, don't use commonly available tech tools? No. Use whatever you wish, but just don't think about that as being something that's going to actually move the needle in your toolkit. You need to have something else. You need to have something that everyone else isn't doing or won't do or can't do. I'm Jane Singer, and in this podcast series, I take you behind the scenes in media and marketing so that you can see exactly what it takes to build brand authority in a very competitive market and get your seat at the table. Now, as I said, most companies are sort of living in a emperor's new clothes mindset. They only see what they're doing and a handful of close competitors. They're basically blind or oblivious to what the rest of the market is doing, and that's oftentimes why they're blindsided. So, really, in order to win, you have to be able to elevate yourself out of that mainstream market there. You can't be there with everybody else fighting it out tooth and nail on social media, hoping to get a post that goes viral. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but you'll never win. No matter what you do, there's always going to be more and more and more coming into that same channel. So the people who win are the people who are willing to do something other than what everybody else is doing. So you might say, well, how do you do that? And like I said, you do it by doing things that other people or your competitors are either unwilling to do, unable to do, don't want to do. And what's that? Well, the hard things, right? The uncomfortable things, the things that cost money. Those are the kind of things that nobody wants. Everybody else is looking for things that are easy, fun, free, fast. They want anything that's plug and play, set it and forget it, right? Those are key words that you put into something to lure in people who are keep searching for that easy route. 10 years later, still looking for the diet where you can eat anything you want and lose 10 pounds in a week. Well, we know that doesn't happen, but it's a good claim to make because everybody wants that. Nobody wants to be told you got to make sacrifices, Jane. You want to get rid of those 10 pounds. Yeah, I would be, hitting the pause button on Easter candy, just saying. Um, so that's the way it is. You want to look for those things that other people don't want to do. And once you get yourself into that mindset, you start to take the first step forward to saying, okay, I'm mentally prepared to elevate myself and to actually build authority and build a premium brand. Now, I'm not suggesting that you make things hard or complicated just for the sake of making them hard and complicated, and then you feel like you're doing the hard and difficult things. That is 100% not correct. What you do is you say, okay, what needs to be done in order to move the needle? What are the core things that move the needle? Okay, and typically they're doing something that is uncomfortable or costs money or whatever you don't want to do. And then you say to yourself, okay, how do I make this as simple as possible? Right? So, for example, doing podcasts as often as I do, and newsletters and all the other things that I do because they do move the needle, is hard in terms of the amount of hours it takes and doing it every single week. There's not always a week when you have time to do it, right? A lot of weeks you're really busy. So you have to think to yourself, how do I manage this so that I can get it done? And that's what can I simplify, right? What can I streamline? What am I doing that actually nobody cares about except me? That the person who's listening to this or reading the newsletter or whatever they're doing actually doesn't matter to them at all. Then I'm just putting a ton of work into it because, basically it's an ego play. So that's the kind of thing you want to look at to streamline it that way, but not to avoid doing something because I don't feel like it and not to overcomplicate it, figuring that you're in some way adding value or increasing your chances because I've made it difficult. So, as I said, anything that is typically fun, glamorous, or that wows your friends and family is tends to be something that you don't want to do. That's not going to move the needle, but that's what everybody else is doing. So that's what you want to avoid. Like, whoa, stay out of that zone because that's going to be where it's really crowded, really noisy, and no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to actually stand out over there. The fact that the things that are difficult and are hard are the things that work is actually good news. You might say, oh, Jane, this doesn't sound very good. No, it's good news. It's great news. Why? Because your competitors aren't going to want to do this. A lot of them aren't even going to want to do it to begin with. They're not even going to get started. And then you have other people who get started and they're not going to continue, right? Believe me, like it's just a matter of time when everybody else drops off, right? It's like running a marathon, little by little by little, right? Everybody else sort of falls off, and it's only a few guys who cross the finish line. Pretty much like that in marketing as well, successful marketing. People drop off, no time, don't want to spend the money, not seeing results, right? I mean, it is really a marathon. And most people are not mentally fit to run a marathon, whether it be a physical marathon, right, going out there and running, or whether it be a business marathon. It's so much easier, right, to just post some photos on social media and you get some likes, and then someone you haven't seen in 10 years shows up and sends you a comment. Wow, Jane, cool. Whoa, are you still doing this? Wow, fantastic. And, oh, it's all really good, but it's social, right? It's socializing. It's not getting a customer, seeing what you're selling and deciding, I think I'm going to buy that. Yeah, I think I need to learn more about that. I think that's something I want to invest in. No, not really, not really. So I think that you want to come at it from the point of view of forgetting about what you enjoy doing or what's easy to do and think to yourself, ultimately, what's going to move the needle? What's going to differentiate what we do, right? And how can I build that all important know, like, and trust, which is the other side of authority, right? Authority is the differentiation point, but also the know, like, and trust, which is absolutely critical. And that know, like, and trust comes from consistently. You can't do things just once. You build that over time, repetition over a long timeline. So you need to be able to provide some kind of awareness for what you do and repetition over time. And that's typically done in one of two ways. Either you're doing image ads and you're running them with a frequency, like you see that for big companies, right? You'll see Apple will do that. You see Google runs ads. You'll see Tesla runs ads. They have image ads, right? It presents the product and they run them all the time and they run them across a lot of media channels. Yeah, it's a big ad spend to do that, 100%. But any kind of consumer advertising is expensive. But people get to know the name and they see the name all the time and they get to know, like, and trust that product and they'll buy it over one they don't really know. So that's that side of things. The other side of things is building content and content, specific content that builds know, like, and trust and builds authority. And we're going to get into that in a minute. So like I said, you have to build a program and you have to stick with it. Now, I've built several media channels, and including this podcast, 3 newsletters, and some other things, and I've done it exactly by following that formula. So, what I'm telling you is stuff I've done, and I'm also sharing with you what I've done with other customers in order to enable them to build authority for their own products. The formula is the same. Basically, what you have to do is 4 key things. I've helped many clients go from just being another option to being the trusted premium choice. And the formula really is 4 key things. Identify what makes you different, determine how much budget you can invest, pick a media channel, and develop a series of content that provides value to your target customer. So, what kind of content, you might say, actually offers value? Typically, it's 3 things. And you might say they're fairly similar. And that is, you're either teaching people how to do something that you know how to do, you're explaining how it works, you're showing someone how to do something, you may be troubleshooting, anything like that, where you're teaching, explaining, and so on. Pointing out pitfalls, things they should avoid, advice type things. You get a lot of that comes from, well, you get a lot of that from service professionals like doctors, lawyers, accountants, but you also can get that from people who are selling machinery and things like that, where they want to tell you, you may be typically operating your machine like this, but however, from what I can see as someone who works with a lot of people who use these machines, you want to do it a different way. So it's that kind of a teaching and explaining and pointing out pitfalls and highlighting misunderstandings. People typically, like for example, what I do, which is here working in media, the view people have of media, right? It just makes you laugh because it's the sort of made for TV view when in fact it's completely different what it's actually like. A day in the life of someone who works in media, what matters, what moves the needle, what we look for, what our challenges are, completely different than the story, so to speak, the narrative that's being presented, very, very different. So if you're able to show people that in whatever industry you're in, also valuable, also builds trust. You see a lot of people who, let's say, are in something, let's say, physical fitness. They'll show you exercises. There'll be a video about, knee pain or back pain or whatever. And they'll be actually saying, here's 5 exercises that I teach my clients that they can do anytime, even at home, to help relieve knee pain. And they actually go through showing you the exercise. That's valuable to somebody. Do you understand it? It positions that person as an expert, as knowledgeable. And over time, you watch enough of their videos, you start to think, I wonder where that guy works. Wonder if I could go see him and, we could talk about how to fix up my knees, right? So you build that familiarity, that know, like, and trust. You see people doing that with other things. Any number of things that you see on YouTube give you a good example of how that works. You see everybody from all walks of life on there. And yes, people do start to watch what they're doing, learn from these people, and start to think about, would it be possible for me to work with them in some way or another? Sometimes someone's on there who has a hair salon. and you think, oh, wouldn't it be great if I could like go to that city where they are and have them cut my hair or teach me how to style my hair, or people doing any number of things. So you want to think of it from a teaching, educational, advice giving. Advice is also good. You have a lot of people who are giving people advice about something within the industry. Now you might be saying to yourself, well, Jane, like I'm here to sell a product, not to create YouTube videos. And I get that. I'm not suggesting you start a YouTube channel, but the point is you have to be sharing things that are value first, because that positions you as being an expert, as being knowledgeable, as being the authority that people go to. And it builds that know, like, and trust when people hear from you in that way over time. And like I said, it takes time. It's not going to be just one thing that you do once and that's going to change everything. It won't. One thing will not change everything. If that's what you're thinking, yeah, please, you need to get off that train of thought. But over time, people regularly get to see you as the go-to person, and then tangential to that, whatever product or service you're selling looks like the one they want because they want to work with you. So that may take a little bit of time to think about, but think about it because that's exactly how it works. I mean, I catch myself doing that, having seen someone on YouTube who's talking about fitness, following what they do, and then looking up to see, where's their gym located? Gee, would love to go there and do like a couple of personal training sessions with that person. That would be great. And it's like, oh my gosh, there it is. Who knows if that person's a great trainer? They just look good on YouTube, but you do get the feeling. You do feel that they're reliable, that they're experts, all kinds of associated characteristics that support them, which is why they do these things. They're not doing it just because they feel like making YouTube videos. It's actually a lot of work to do that. So typically, they are building that relationship with an audience. And it's thinking along those lines that's going to support what you want to do. And it's what we help people with in our authority building program and our customer success program and things like that. The idea is that you want to be able to help people, not just push product, not dump some kind of lengthy white paper on people. People don't want that anymore. That doesn't move the needle. Now, what you don't want to do, and this is what people typically do, they always do. Whenever I work with clients, it's just like, oh my gosh, how do I, get these people down off of that wall? But typically, people think that it's not good value for them, not a waste of their time, waste of their money if they are not pitching products. They got to get the name of their product and what they do in right at the beginning. If you're doing something like, let's say we're doing an interview show, which is a great way in order to be able to get people to build that know, like, and trust, is to do a little podcast series or a customer success series or any number of things, whether it be written, whether it be spoken. But nope, everybody wants to start off with, but Jane, like, okay, but let me just tell about my product. I just want to tell people, okay, let me just jump in and say, and you know what? Okay, nobody's listening to you anymore. Nobody wants to listen to a pitch. I mean, they don't, unless you reached out to them and said, I'd like to come by and tell you about my product. But if you're trying to position yourself as building authority and know, like, and trust, and basically what they're getting is a thinly veiled product pitch, people aren't going to listen. So they don't want to hear you talk about your product. They don't want to hear you tell about why your product is different, better, or whatever than everybody else's. And they surely don't want, like even worse, is you talking about yourself. The amount of virtue signaling that goes on today is just off the charts. And the number of people who listen to that and think, he's probably a great guy, they don't. They just click away, right? And how many people do you hear saying, Jane, I'm a really good guy. No, really, I'm a giver. I'm a giver. I believe in giving and helping people. And, I'm a great dad. And I show up for stuff. And, you're just listening to that thinking, who's he trying to convince? So don't go down that path. Whether you're a good person or a bad person, essentially, that's a value judgment on somebody else. Someone may like you, someone may not like you, and nobody really cares that much about that when they're buying your product, when they're, making particularly like an enterprise level decision. They're not really too worried about that. So avoid that. Do not do that, please. I know. It's very hard to convince people that if they're doing something that they're spending time and money on and it's not pitching product, they're wasting time. And they'll die on that sword. You can't convince them that they are not selling, they are repelling by doing that. But keep it in mind and focus on what we can teach, what we can explain. Think about it from the point of view. If somebody in your family said to you, Jane, I understand you work in tech. Like, what do you do? Like, what does your company do? Would you give him a sales pitch? Probably not. I mean, after all, your brother's probably not going to buy your product. He just wants to know what you do, right? If you sat down with a group of friends and they were like, yeah, what do you do? I know you work in media. What do you actually do? You wouldn't be pitching product. Think about it like that. Think about it as if you're explaining, as if you're helping, as if you're helping people who aren't in this field or in this field know better what you're doing. And as you're doing that, you are building a tremendous amount of credibility. If you do that consistently, you build like radical authority, and you build, like I said, that all important know, like, and trust. An example of this, if you want to have an example further than what I've given you, that is, try to look up online for Rory Sutherland. He does a tremendous amount of interviews. He's all over the place because the man is absolutely brilliant and he's a joy to listen to. He's the vice chairman of Ogilvy and Mather, which is an advertising and marketing company, one of the biggest. And Rory is really like just a genius, a legend in his own time. And if you have the chance to listen to him, like I said, it's never a waste of time and it's always tremendously valuable. And you'll hear him talking about marketing and advertising and what works. And he'll be discussing campaigns that other companies have done and what he sees and why he thinks this is brilliant and really works and why he thinks that's going to fail. And he's never pitching, but you should call us up over at Ogilvy and Mather. If you really want to have a great campaign, we'd be the guys. Never, never. And yet, I'm sure that everyone listening to that at one point or another is thinking, wow, like if I could only hire someone like Rory to work with us, that would be excellent. And how many enterprise clients, because probably at the level that they work, it would only be enterprise that work with them. How many people have seen that and said, he's the man, like we got to work with this guy? Why? Because you know, like, and trust him. You understand his thinking. And that's really important. Now, I've been doing this, like I said, for over 2 decades. And I'm not going to tell you this is an easy thing to do. I think it's something that probably one of the only things that's going to really help you build authority and actually move the needle forward in terms of driving sales. But I would be lying to you if I told you this was easy. It's not easy. Um, and that's, like I said, a good thing because your competitors aren't going to want to do it. The key thing, really, and like I said earlier, to be able to do this is you have to think to yourself, how do I simplify this? And it's the simplification and cutting out all the stuff that doesn't really move the needle that will help you to stay in the game on this. So essentially, it comes down to having that lean and mean mindset, that ability to run marathons, to understand that this is not a sprint, this is not a bailout. I mean, as you've heard me say many times, marketing is not a magic wand. It's not going to make all your problems go away, but it will certainly help you grow and elevate your business where everybody else is stuck. It'll get you from stuck to moving forward and put you above the rest of the crowd. A lot of people say, when should we start? Particularly people who are launching new products. And essentially, the answer to that is, well, ideally yesterday, but since that's not an option, then you have to start today. You have to start doing something today. You, a lot of people stall. We want to get it right. We're working on this or that, or we're not ready. If you haven't started doing marketing, you're never going to sell your product. The product will not sell itself. It will not. So until you are actually doing something, nothing is moving. You need to find something that you can do. And I often say to people, outside of enterprise clients, I say, think about what you realistically could do. Okay, think about what kind of a budget you could afford to allocate each month that you could live with, not something that you can only achieve on the very best month of your entire year, but what is achievable on a regular basis. Because like I say, if you don't have consistency, forget it. You're wasting your time. And then on the time side, how much time can you allocate to being able to work on this? And those are the two key levers that you have to pull. If someone says, I don't want to spend money, it's going to be really tough to do anything. If someone says, I really don't have any time, it's also going to be tough. Or I don't really have any time, but I've got some mid-tier or junior person, forget about it. If it's not important enough to be with the senior people, it's just not important. And you might as well, just do something else. It's something that involves commitment. But if you make the commitment, you can move the needle. And that's really what's important. It's what I've seen. It's what I have to steel myself to do because honestly, I face the same time constraints and budget constraints that everybody else does. So it's very easy to try to talk yourself out of it. But in order to win, you need to be able to stay in the game. So, like I say, you want to be able to figure out what's achievable for you and start small. I would always say to people, start small. Start small, stay consistent, and then you can always build over time. If you're waiting until you have that big budget available to you or till you have enough time, that is never, never, never going to get here. So you just keep kicking things out, and then eventually you're still stuck where you were, and it's another year gone by, nothing achieved. So yes, it's not easy to do, and it does take a lot of time and effort. And yes, it helps if you're working with somebody. But if that's not available, it's not available. At the same time, if you can just get yourself to start now and take that step forward and keep, as my dad used to say, keep putting one foot in front of the other, you'll get there, whereas other people will have fallen back. Marketing is a slow burn that compounds over time, so you need to give yourself that time. If you'd like to learn more about what an authority building campaign looks like, you can get a detailed breakdown over on our website at seat.fm/authority. There's a PDF that you can download that outlines the whole process. I'm Jane Singer. Thank you for being with me here, and I look forward to talking to you again in the next video.